I used to think that if I worked harder, that if I prayed harder, that if I went to church more, that it would speed God's process up. I thought that there were a certain set of actions that if I took them, that God would move on my time. If you've been praying for something for a long time, believing, hoping, standing on God's promise, but it still hasn't happened yet, this message is for you. You trust God, but you're tired. You're tired of hoping. You're tired of wondering when it'll be your turn. And you're tired of pretending that the waiting doesn't hurt. It's okay. I've been there too. But here's something that really was transformational and that really helped me in my waiting season. I had to understand that peace doesn't come after the waiting. Peace comes inside of it. So the first step towards peace is honesty. You cannot heal what you continue to hide. And I know church culture tells you sort of the opposite. It's like the fake it till you make it thing where just trust God. Just pray it away. Pray away the pain, pray away the frustration, pray away the desperation, even in some cases. But if you've been there and you've heard it and you've tried it, you realize that it's easier said than done. There is no shame in the pain. God never asked us to fake faith. He actually invites us to feel the things that we experience, but to bring those things back to Him. David said in Psalm 13, "How long, Lord? Will you forget me forever?" That was real, that was raw. And God still called David a man after His own heart. God does not ask you to fake the funk. God is not asking you to pretend that it doesn't hurt, that it's not disappointing, that it's not frustrating. But He's asking you to stay committed to the plan, to draw closer to Him in those moments, to be unwavering in your faith. So yes, you can love God and still become weary in the wait. Peace will come though when you stop pretending that you're okay and draw closer to Him. Part 2 is releasing the myth of control. I used to think that if I worked harder, that if I prayed harder, that if I went to church more, that it would speed God's process up. In the essence, I thought that there were a certain set of actions that if I took them, that God would move on my time, that I could somehow prove to Him that I'm ready. The problem is we didn't create the process. We're merely a player in the process. God has already orchestrated the promise without us. The process that we're going through is specific to the promise that He's created for us. We're trying to rewrite the chapter in a book without knowing how the book is supposed to end. When we cling to control, what we're telling God is, I trust you, but I have a plan B just in case your plan doesn't work out. And that's not how it works. His plan is going to work out. There is no set of circumstances in which His plan doesn't work out. However, the process that we find ourselves into takes into account the detours that we create, the delays that we cause, and the misdirection that we tend to find ourselves in. We have to release the need to be in control of the situation. And at the point where we commit to the process and we commit to who God needs us to become to get to the promise that He has already prepared for us, the quicker we can actually move through this waiting season and find peace. And I'll be the first to admit that I've been there before, where I've sat in bed, lying awake, trying to compare, trying to rewind and replay different scenarios and situations. And I look at the timeline of my life and try to figure out in different areas, what if I would have done this differently? What if I never went to this college? What if I went to this one instead? What if my parents never moved to North Carolina? Philippians 4:6-7 tells us to be anxious with nothing. And it goes on to tell us to come to God in prayer. And the peace of God will guard your hearts and your minds in Jesus Christ. Notice it doesn't say that the answer will guard you. The peace of God will guard you. That means that peace can show up before the promise does. You don't have to know every detail for you to achieve peace. You just have to let go of your control and submit to God. You've been praying for God to move, but maybe He's waiting on you to be still. The waiting room isn't a punishment. It's proving ground for your purpose. The Waiting Room Collective is a faith-based community for women learning to trust God in transition, to surrender, grow, and find peace in the pause. Inside, you'll find faith-filled conversations, devotionals, and sisterhood, but more than that, you'll find alignment with what God has already been whispering. It's time to stop waiting alone. This is your invitation to wait with intention, to wait with faith, to wait well. Join us today at thewaitingroomcollective.com, where faith, peace, and purpose meet in the in-between. Now let's get back into the video. The third step is redefining what peace looks like. Peace isn't passive. Peace is a posture. So a lot of times we think that we can get peace once this set of circumstances is in place. Once I get the job that I want, I will find peace. Once I have the money that I desire, I will have peace. Once I find the spouse that I want, I will have peace. Peace is a posture. It's choosing to rest when your flesh wants to rush. It's slowing down. It's taking in everything that's happening, and it's choosing to come forth with settled energy. So what does that look like? In the moments where you want to turn up and you want to crash out, journaling instead. Instead of worrying, turning to worship. Taking one obedient step instead of trying to figure out 10 steps before you take the one. Every act of release says that I trust you even when I can't see what you're doing. There was a time where I felt completely forgotten. It seemed like everyone around me was getting their yes when I was still having to wait. But what I had to learn is that me worrying, me internalizing these things, because we do that too. We think, am I not good enough? Am I not doing the right thing? Maybe if I had the same resources that that person had, what if I had the same upbringing that that person had, then maybe my situation would have been different. And then you go into a spiral trying to rewrite a history that you didn't write in the first place. I can remember asking God, like, when is it going to be my turn? Why aren't you moving for me? And I felt him whisper, I am. But right now, I'm moving in you. I'm moving in the spaces where you cannot see. And maybe that's the message for you too. Perhaps the movement that's happening is within rather than outward. You may not be ready for the outward moment yet. That doesn't mean that things aren't happening. That doesn't mean that God has forgotten about you. What it means is that you have to stay committed, you have to stay faithful, and you have to continue to look upward instead of looking outward. There's a reason why they say comparison is the thief of joy. Because when we start to look outward and we start to compare our journey and we start to compare the blessings that other people receive, it doesn't allow us to fully take in and achieve the posture of peace that allows us to do the work on ourselves that may be prohibiting us from getting to the place that we are promised. Remember and realize that the place that you are right now is not necessarily an indication of where you're headed. There may be some lesson, some development that needs to happen in the space where you are that God has placed you in order for you to be prepared for where you're going. There is purpose attached to all of our existences. We were here not to just exist, but to be vessels for his kingdom. There are people whose transformation is attached to your development and your growth. The longer that it takes you to become the person that you need to become, the longer it takes for those people to get the breakthrough that they need, to get to the promise that they've been promised. We have to stop living a life that is solely focused on our own personal gain, our own personal evolution, our own personal transformation, and we have to look at the bigger picture. God does everything on purpose, and he does it intentionally. When we focus on those external things, those very surface level things, we miss the opportunity to do the deep self-work that will allow us to make larger impact. At the end of the day, sometimes God slows the progress to speed up the growth. So I want you to take a moment and just ask yourself, what are you trying to control that God is trying to release you from? What am I trying to control that God is asking me to trust him with? I want you to name it, say it out loud, then pray this with me. God, I release what was never mine to carry. I trade my pressure for your peace. Teach me to trust your pace more than my plan. If you're ready to keep walking in this type of peace, then I invite you to join me in the Waiting Room Collective. This is a community of women learning to rest in the pause of life while we work towards achieving God's promise and his plan. You're not behind, you're being built. If this video was helpful for you, make sure that you share this video, like it, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.